Okay, so I'm gonna try this again. The first time that I tried to record this video, I accidentally filmed it on 4K and with 60 frames per second. So yeah, that video ended up being like 20 gigabytes or something, and it took forever to upload it to my computer. Actually, I couldn't even upload it to my computer because the file was that big. So we're gonna try this again, a bit more like in a normal file size. So we've actually already done this video once before last year, and this is the second iteration of my yearly upload of all the books that I plan to read in a year. Again, to kind of reiterate how I explained it last year, is that this list is not exhaustive in any way. Like, I'm not supposed to like read only these books, or I don't even have to read all of them. It's just kind of like a list that I've constructed, that I construct every year, that is definitely mostly influenced by the way that I feel and the mood that I'm in. Yeah, so I don't have to read all of these books, and I don't have to read only these books. It's just sort of like a list that I constructed at the start of the year of 25 books I want to read, and it's always 25, not any less, not any more. And it's not even that I have to read exactly 25 books a year. It's just like a motivator for me, because sometimes I can get really stuck in like choice paralysis, where I really want to read but I can't really choose when I want to read. So I kind of narrow it down for myself at the beginning of each year, just to sort of have like a reference point for if I'm stuck with a book that I want to read. Yeah, it's just a motivator for me to get started on reading when I feel like reading but I don't know what to read. So that's what this list is. Actually, the very first book on this list is a book that is downstairs that I can't be bothered to get. But it is 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Maria Marquez, I think. Is it Maria? I don't know. I can insert a clip here of me holding up the book just so you know what it looks like, because it is like one of the ugliest books that I own. It's like this green cover that just has a bunch of like weird like graphic elements in it that don't really go together, and it just looks really shoddily put together. But it is one of my favorite book covers of all time just because of how ugly it is. I'm already halfway through the book, or not halfway, I think I'm like 28% in or something. I'm like 116 pages in. I really wanted to finish the book before February, but I don't think that's gonna be possible because the book is a bit of a drag, and I'm not really too fond of the writing style, to be honest. Like, it's very stream of consciousness, but in like the most confusing way ever. It actually resembles Virginia Woolf's writing a lot, I think. Virginia Woolf's writing, or like stream of consciousness, at least follows chronologically, but 100 Years of Solitude doesn't even, like, it just jumps between timelines and jumps between periods of time, which makes it all more confusing. And what makes it even more confusing is like half the characters have the same name, so I'm not even sure who half the characters are when we're talking about them. Yeah, so that's like slowing down my read a little bit. I do plan on like finishing it, but at this point I think it's gonna take some time. But this is one of the books that I really want to read this year, and I'm already got a good chunk in there. All right, so the next book on the list is The Dispossessed by Ursula K. Le Guin. This is one of her most famous novels of all time, but it's one of those that I still haven't read. Like, I've read The Left Hand of Darkness, I've read The Lathe of Heaven, but I haven't read The Dispossessed yet, and I really want to make my way to this. This was also on the reading list last year, but I never actually got to it because, I don't know, like last year it was a fucking time, okay? It was pretty hectic. Probably half of the books that I really wanted to read last year I didn't end up reading just because I had so much going on. But hopefully, now that I'm unemployed and I'm just sitting at home doing nothing, I can finally get into my book list, and I definitely want to start with this one after 100 Years of Solitude. Either this one or like one of the other books on this list, but we'll see. I definitely do want to make my way to The Dispossessed this year though. So here's to hoping I will get there. Okay, next book on the list is The Castle by Franz Kafka. I have the copy here. This is one of the books that I traded the the Mists of Avalon book for in Australia when I bought it. I mentioned this in one of my vlogs, but if you don't know, so while I was in Australia, I went to one of their bookshops there. It's called Harry Hartog, and I saw that they had the Mists of Avalon, and my sister, she was also browsing and wanted to buy something, so I was like, okay, I guess we're like in a buying mood. So I was like, fuck it, you know, I'll just buy a book as well. And I saw the Mists of Avalon, and what really drew me to that book was actually the format. So it was pretty much like the Dispossessed, you know, it was like a mass market kind of pocket book, and I really like that kind of format for books because it just fits so well in your hand, and it's so small and it's so thick as well, and like most of the time they're like floppy. So I just like that format for books. So I was like, okay, I'll just get this. And I bought it, and then literally a second after I bought it, I was like, wait, I have a weird feeling about this book. Like, I feel like I've kind of heard about it, but I'm not really too sure. So let me just look it up just to make sure. And literally, I looked it up, and the first review I saw for it was like, yeah, the author is a rapist, and that significantly colored my opinion of it. Yeah, so I found out that the author was a terrible human being. So I was like, I don't really want this in my possession. I don't feel good about it, like conscience wise. Like, I just felt like even having it in my hands, like having it in my possession, I just felt really icky about it. So I went back to the store, Harry Hartog, and I was like, hey, like, can I return this? But they don't do refunds. All they do is like a exchange voucher or something, so you can exchange it for a different book. And let me tell you, like, this book was so fucking, it was so expensive. I could buy 2 books. I could exchange it for 2 books. And one of them is like 800 pages, like one of the books that I exchanged it for. And anyway, so this was one of the books that I exchanged it for. Thank God, because I would much rather have something by Franz Kafka than anything by a rapist. So, and I chose this one because I read the back. I am familiar with Franz Kafka. Like, I haven't actually read any of his work yet, but I know he's very famous, like for example for the Metamorphosis. But I saw this one and I was like, oh, okay, this looks interesting. And I read the back summary. It basically says the castle is the story of Kay, the unwanted land surveyor who is never to be admitted to the castle nor accepted in the village, and yet cannot go home. And that really intrigued me, especially the part about like a character not being able to go back home, because that resonates a lot with the immigrant experience. And I'm a second generation immigrant, so I do sort of know that feeling, and I am familiar with that feeling of not really belonging anywhere and not being able to go back to where you actually, you know, are from, if that makes sense. So yeah, like I was really drawn to this one, and I'm really excited to get into it because I think it's also one of his last works. It says on the back here that he began the castle in 1922, but it was never finished. Yet this, the last of his great novels, feels strangely complete. So I'm excited to get to this one. We'll see. Maybe this one will be after 100 Years of Solitude or The Dispossessed. We'll see which one comes first, which one I'm more in the mood for. Next book on my list is the other book that I exchanged the Mists of Avalon for, which is Alexandre Dumas' Alexandre Dumas' The Count of Monte Cristo. When I exchanged the Mists of Avalon for this book, I didn't realize that I already had a copy of The Count of Monte Cristo. I actually received another copy by my friend because she didn't want it anymore, and I was like, well, I haven't read it, but I really do want to read it, so let me just get a free copy. But the thing about that copy is that it is so ugly. Let me show you. So the other copy I have is the Wordsworth Classic, but it's like the Wordsworth Classic collection with the ugly covers. So I have this one and I have this one, and obviously like this one looks better, and I think they're also translated by 2 different translators, so I'm not sure. I think it depends on which audiobook I can find, or maybe I can donate this one because it is a pretty, like, it's a fairly new copy. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. The only thing is that the cover is just kind of ugly, and I feel like, you know, since I indirectly paid for this one, I'm kind of leaning towards this one to read in. But yeah, I didn't even think about the fact that I had another copy of this when I exchanged it. So, but yeah, I want to read this book because I've heard about it, especially from Emmy Reeds. I think she read it last year, and it's one of those like really thick books that you really need some time to get through. I think it's like 1100 pages or something, and she really loved it, so I thought maybe I will love it as well. And also I think there's either a movie or a TV show adapted from last year as well, so I really want to watch that one. But the thing is, I'm one of those people who's like, if I see like an adaptation that I know is based on a book, I need to read the book before watching the adaptation, because I love comparing adaptations and just seeing like what choices they make and why. So yeah, I'm really excited to get to this one. I'm not sure when. I think it's pretty unlikely to get to this like early in the year, but hopefully sometime this year I will make it to this. The next book on the list is Knight's Master by Tanith Lee. The reason I wanted to get into this one is because of the recent like Neil Gaiman scandal that came out. Like, if you haven't read the Vulture article, I can link it down below, but just be aware that it discusses heavily triggering topics like sexual abuse and rape. Really, like, be careful if you want to read it, but you are like easily triggered by these topics. I would not recommend reading it because it does go into like heavy detail. But when that Vulture article came out, I was so repulsed by just Neil Gaiman and everything that he's done to the women. And I really think it's so brave of the women to stand up to such a successful author, and I hope they know that I am behind them 100%. But in that, I saw that someone had pointed out that Neil Gaiman had kind of plagiarized Tanith Lee's Knight's Master for his Sandman comics, and that he pulled a lot of the elements from Knight's Master into Sandman, including like the way he wrote and designed the characters, as well as some of the plot elements. That really drew me in because Tanith Lee is a female author, and I think if like the plagiarism is true, I think that's something I want to see for myself and kind of compare, because I did see like the Sandman TV show. I did watch it when it first came out, I think. I really liked it the first time I watched it, but then the second time that I watched it, which was like a year ago or something, while I was still in Holland, I didn't really like it. Like the second time that I watched it, actually, I was like, wait, is this the same series that I watched like the first time? I don't know, like the writing kind of seemed poor to me, and this was before like the podcast came out or any of the allegations came out, so it was not like colored by any of that. But it was just like, you know, the second time that I watched the TV show, most of the magic had just kind of gone and its flaws were more prominent to me. So that was a weird experience. But yeah, that's why I want to read Knight's Master by Tanith Lee, because I want to kind of compare how much of Knight's Master Neil Gaiman actually like plagiarized or like took from, without giving her credit, by the way. Like, he has never mentioned her as one of his biggest inspirations. Yeah, I'm curious to see like how much they resemble each other. Then the next book on the list is probably not going to be a surprise, but it is definitely one of the books that I want to get into at least as early as March, even though it's like a monster. Like, I think it's almost as long as The Count of Monte Cristo, if not longer, or maybe a little bit shorter. But it is none other than Capital by Karl Marx. And the beauty of this book, and especially this cover, is that I found this book, how much is this? It's maybe like $15. I found this book for $15 at a local Danish bookstore when I was in Aarhus to visit my friend. And it was such a miracle, because every single other copy that I found of Capital by Karl Marx, which includes not even both volumes, but just the first volume, was $45. Like, that's insane. Actually, Karl Marx is like rolling in his grave if he heard that his work costs $45. Not even for both of the volumes, which this book is, but just for one volume. That's crazy to me. I refuse to buy that copy because I was like, this is not in the spirit of Marxism, so I won't. But then I found this copy that was much cheaper, and even though like even buying this copy is also like against Marxist beliefs, I was willing to kind of encroach on those beliefs for this copy just because I really want to be able to annotate while I'm reading. This contains both of the volumes, capital volumes 1 and 2, and I think the first volume is the classic translation by Samuel Moore and Edward Aveling, and then the second volume is translated by Ernest Untermann. I'm really excited to get into this. I did find the audiobook for volume 1, but I can't find the audiobook for volume 2 with that translation. Like the only ones I've been able to find are like translated also by Samuel Moore or it's translated by someone else. So I'll have to see like how, maybe I'll just read volume 2 like on my own. We'll see. But yeah, I definitely want to get to this as early as March, and I plan on like vlogging my entire experience just so that I can kind of bring you with me on my Marxist adventure. Then the next book on my list is Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. I actually don't have a copy of the Metamorphosis, but I really do want a copy. But most of the copies that I've seen are like, you know, the penguin cloth bound, and those are freaking expensive, and I don't want to pay that much for the Metamorphosis, but I definitely do want to touch on the Metamorphosis this year. I think it's actually one of the reading items in the book club that I'm in, so maybe one day I will get to it somehow. All right, next book on the list is the Iliad by Homer. I do have this copy. Where did I buy this actually? I think I bought this copy in Australia. I think it was like one of the secondhand bookstores that I visited in Glebe, and I found this really like awesome copy. I think it's from, is it from 72? It's from 76, which makes it almost 50 years old. That's crazy. But I'm really excited to get to this one because I think I'm finally ready for the Iliad. Like last year it was also on my list, but I didn't really feel that ready for it yet because it seemed a bit intimidating. But actually I think I'm ready for it now. So I think I definitely want to dive into Greek mythology and especially the Homeric hymns and just dive into it. And actually this is in tandem with another one of Homer's works, which is the Odyssey, that I also really want to get into this year. I don't have a copy of the Odyssey yet, but I am hoping to find a secondhand copy somewhere, maybe in my local antique store or somewhere else. But yeah, I'm definitely banking on getting into the Iliad and the Odyssey this year, sometime this year. Okay, so next book on the list was also on the list last year, which is The Crystal Cave by Mary Stuart. This is, I think, a retelling or a reimagination of the myths of King Arthur. I heard that this was widely regarded as like a positive retelling, like it's a very good retelling. I found, I think, the copy online. I don't know, that's really it. That's really all I know about it. I also want to touch on the Arthurian legends just to, you know, be knowledgeable about them because people reference them a lot. So I feel like if I dive into like the original texts, obviously this is not like the original text, but I do also plan on touching on the original texts, or not original. I think it's it was actually just written down by someone in Great Britain at one point in the 18th century. But that is to say that I really want to dive into like the Arthurian legends and know more about them, just to be in on the scoop, you know, when people kind of reference King Arthur and like Merlin. I want to know, like, I want to be able to know what they're talking about and also what I'm talking about when I talk about them. So excited to get to this one, excited to get to The Sword in the Stone by T.H. White, and excited to get to the collection of Arthurian legends that was written by some 18th century noble. Okay, next book on the list is A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf. This is her essay collection, or maybe it's just one essay of A Room of One's Own, where she basically advocates for women being able to pursue writing full-time. She basically argues as far as I'm aware. I haven't read it, but she basically argues that all a woman really needs to be able to write a book is her own room and a pen. And that's really it, which is as much as like a man is afforded, if not more. And yeah, that's basically what she's arguing for. So I'm excited to get to one of the like feminist essays of all time and see what I think about it. Next book on the list is Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. This was also on the list last year. Never got to it. I think it starts in 2024. Actually, I did start it. I think I started the first few pages, but I pretty much zoned out a lot while I was listening to the audiobook, so I wanted to I feel like I wasn't really in the right headspace, so I'm hoping to find like the right headspace sometime this year to finally get into this, because I think it starts in 2024 and progresses through 2025 and 26 and 27. So yeah, I'm hoping to get to this one this year. The next book on the list is Women with Mustaches and Men Without Beards by Afsana Najmabadi. I am already in the middle of reading this, but I still have like a lot to go because there's no audiobook, so I'm making my way slowly through it. But this is basically like a history textbook, or not a textbook, but it's basically like a history book talking about gender roles and the way beauty was portrayed in medieval, not even medieval Persia, as early as like the 18th century Persia. And how it sort of changed throughout the years to become more and more like homophobic, because homoerotic relationships were pretty prominent in Persia as early as like the 18th to the 19th century. I think it was like the early 19th century where it sort of shifted and they started to portray only women as like the objects of affection and attraction. Yeah, I'm really excited to finish this book and just see what the author has to say, because she's making a lot of good points and it's very fascinating, the whole topic, to be honest. So I'm really excited to finish this sometime this year. Next book on the list is The Mirror of My Heart, translated by Dick Davis. This is a collection of Persian poetry written by female poets in either like medieval Persia or like a bit earlier Persia, or a bit later, sorry. I read his collection of Hafez's poems and his translations of them, and I thought that the way that he translated them really managed to convey the beauty of his word choices and the masterfulness of his skill. I'm really excited to read The Mirror of My Heart because this is a collection of female poets, which were also pretty big in Persia. Yeah, honestly, like Persian poetry is... honestly, nothing beats Persian poetry. Not even like Rainer Maria Rilke. He doesn't stand next to Hafez or any other like Persian poet. Like Persian poetry is where it's fucking at for romantic poetry. So I'm really excited to get to this. The next three I will kind of lump together just because they're all by the same author, and also because, I mean, yeah, that's mostly it. So the first one is King Lear by William Shakespeare. I want to dive more into William Shakespeare this year because I really enjoyed my journey last year where I read Macbeth and Hamlet and Othello. So I want to make it through some of his other plays as well. And one of them is King Lear. Another one is Romeo and Juliet. I found a secondhand copy of Romeo and Juliet that matches my Hamlet copy, but I gave it to my best friend for her birthday instead of keeping it to myself, which I kind of regret now. But I really want to read Romeo and Juliet. I'm actually kind of baffled that I haven't read it already because it is probably his most famous play. The last one is Julius Caesar. I think I actually have a copy here. Recently I found this amazing copy of Julius Caesar by William Shakespeare. It's a copy from the 50s. I think it's from 52 or something. It honestly baffles me that it's in this good of a condition. Like you can see the spine is just intact and the pages are like not even yellowed or anything, which is baffling from a copy from the 50s. But anyway, so I really want to make it through Julius Caesar and all of his other plays this year. Okay, next 3 books I'm also going to group together because they are a series and they were also on the list from last year, which is the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I have them there, but I'm not going to take them out because it's just gonna fuck everything up. But yeah, I never actually made it to the Lord of the Rings trilogy last year. Again, I had so much going on, but I think it's also because like they're just like a bit too intimidating for me. I thought of like waiting a little bit. Maybe I'm ready for them this year, but we'll see. Next book on the list is White Nights by Fyodor Dostoevsky. This one has gained a lot of traction lately on like in book spaces, both on Goodreads, but also on BookTube. Like I've seen a lot of people talking about it. And since I've already read I think 2 or 3 of Dostoevsky's works, I am kind of curious why everyone has kind of gravitated towards this one compared to his other works. So yeah, I really want to read it and see for myself like why everyone loves it so much. Okay, next book on the list is Tailchaser's Song by Tad Williams. I don't even remember how I found this book, but I just remember that the protagonist is a cat. And that's all I know about it. I actually showed it to my friend, like one of my friends, and she was also drawn to it, and she was like, when you read this book, let me know how it is, because I'm really curious like if it's a good book or not. So I'm hoping to make it to this book sometime this year. Okay, next book on the list is The Foxwife by Yang Tse Chu. I really don't know anything about this book. I've just seen the title and the cover, which is gorgeous, by the way. It's a gorgeous cover, but I've just seen the title and the cover both on Goodreads, and also I think Emmy Reads read it sometime last year or something. I don't remember what she said about it. I don't remember if she liked it or not. All I know is that it is pretty popular and I kind of want to see what all the fuss is about. And also because I couldn't actually fill out my list of 25 books, so I just chose this one because it does kind of intrigue me. But if I don't make it to this one this year, I'm not going to be too surprised. Okay, and then the last book on the list is Our Share of Night by Mariana Enriquez. This is a horror book, I'm pretty sure. I think it was pretty popular last year and the year before that. That's really all I know about it. I also added this one to the list just to fill out my list of 25 books. Even though like I have Charlotte Bronte's Villette, and it's this really gorgeous cover. Again, it's like one of those mass markets pocketbooks that I really enjoy holding in my hand. So maybe I'll make it to this one before any of the last 3 books. But anyway, that really makes it for all of the books that I really want to read in 2025. I hope I make it to most of the books on this list. I do have a physical copy of most of them, which I think will help. But yeah, that really makes it for my list. Let me know if you have any suggestions. Let me know if you have a list or what books you want to read this year. And as always, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to me blabbering on, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!